In the span of exactly 5 days, the WNBA managed to do something truly remarkable. It handed its biggest star a technical foul for clapping. It left her off its own anniversary poster. It let a veteran punch her in the throat on live television, with a referee standing 6 feet away, and called nothing. And then it handed out a one-game slap on the wrist like it was all just an unfortunate Tuesday. This is not a story about one bad game. This is about a pattern so obvious, so repeated, so loud, that you genuinely have to wonder if anyone running this league is paying attention. And before we get into all of it, if you've been watching this situation unfold and you're feeling like you're the only sane person left, hit that like button right now and subscribe so you don't miss a single update, because this story is moving fast. Let's start where everything started. Monday night, June 22nd, Indiana Fever versus Phoenix Mercury. Game 1 of back-to-back matchups that would end up shaking the entire basketball world. The Fever won that Monday game 86-77. Caitlin Clark dropped a game-high 24 points, 3 rebounds, 9 assists, shooting 8, 4, 17 in 29 minutes. Clean, clinical, dominant. But the scoreboard was almost irrelevant by the time that final buzzer sounded, because the fourth quarter turned into something closer to a street fight than a basketball game. 5 technical fouls were handed out across the floor. Sophie Cunningham and Maisha Hines-Allen picked up technicals. Alyssa Thomas and Dana Bonner followed. Then both Thomas and Hines-Allen collected their second technicals and were ejected. The energy in that building was beyond competitive. It was personal. And here's where the story starts getting strange, because Clark herself got a technical foul that night. Want to know what it was for? Clapping. Caitlin Clark was penalized for putting her hands together. That technical, her 5th of the season, brought her to 3 techs away from an automatic 1-game suspension. Meanwhile, this same game featured a fist to the face that nobody flagged. But that particular fist had not happened yet. What happened after the Monday game is the detail that makes Wednesday feel less like an accident and more like a conclusion. Phoenix Mercury head coach Nate Tibbetts walked to the podium after his team's loss, and instead of cooling anything down, he turned up the dial. His message was simple and it was deliberate. He said his team got a little chippy in the fourth. He said, and these are his words, "I'm sure they'll remember it, and I know we'll remember it too. We've got a competitive group. They're not afraid of the smoke." Read that slowly. His star player just got ejected. The temperature between these two franchises is already at a boiling point, and his message to the locker room going into a rematch 48 hours later is, "We remember. We do not back down." Tibbetts added that the chaos would likely serve as a motivator for players on both sides, but particularly for the Mercury, who had blown a 16-point lead and handed the Fever a win. So Phoenix walked into Wednesday's game fueled, angry, and looking for something. And the most physical player on their roster delivered. Whether you call it motivation or something colder depends on what you believe about what came next. But either way, the words came before the act, and that is worth sitting with. Wednesday, June 24th, Gamebridge Fieldhouse. Rematch. The second quarter, 6 minutes and 52 seconds remaining on the clock. Clark drove toward the basket. She tumbled to the floor after contact with defender Lexi Held. At that point, 3 Phoenix players, Lexi Held, Alyssa Thomas, and Dana Bonner, collapsed into the pile, scrambling for the loose ball. And as Thomas rose from that scramble, she did 2 things that do not belong in a basketball game. She drove a knee toward Clark's midsection into the groin area, and then she pressed a closed fist directly into Clark's throat. Clark was already on the ground, already down. Thomas then stood up and stepped over her like nothing happened. No foul was called. There was a referee standing on the baseline. Right there, camera footage shows it clearly. The official was in perfect position to see the play, and nothing came of it. The clip went viral within minutes. Within the hour, sports media personalities across the country were firing off reactions. Dave Portnoy of Barstool Sports called it a brutal cheap shot. Former players called it dangerous. The phrase punch to the throat was trending. And still, in that moment, there was no whistle, no review, no consequence of any kind. The most marketable athlete in women's sports was on the hardwood floor with a closed fist pressed in her neck, and the game just kept moving. If you find yourself wondering how that is even possible, you're not alone. But hold on, because the night was not done with Caitlin Clark yet. A few possessions after the Thomas incident, Clark received a pass from Sophie Cunningham, pulled up for a 3-pointer, and Mercury forward Valerian Ayayi stepped completely underneath her landing space. The officials went to the monitor to review it. They watched the replay. They saw a defender's foot come down directly on top of where Clark needed to land, and they still classified it as a common personal foul rather than a flagrant one reckless closeout. That decision, made with video evidence right in front of them, is the part that Coach Stephanie White would later say pushed her completely over the edge. After the Ayayi play, Clark was visibly grabbing at her back but remained in the game. She did not stay much longer. In the third quarter, Clark walked off the court and went back to the locker room with a back injury. She did not return. In her 20 minutes of play before exiting, she had already put up 19 points and 8 assists. Hurt, targeted, and playing through a back issue that has followed her all season, she was still the best player on the floor. The Fever lost 111 to 109. 2 points. 2 points that might have swung the other way if their best player had not been driven into the hardwood twice in the same game without a single call. When the numbers finally hit, the picture got darker. Phoenix shot 24 free throws in the second half alone. In the fourth quarter, the Fever were called for 11 fouls. Phoenix was called for 2. And Clark's coach had heard enough. Stephanie White did not mince a single word in her post-game press conference. She said she saw the Thomas play and brought it to the officials at halftime. And still, in the second half, her team drew 11 fourth-quarter fouls to Phoenix's 2, and Phoenix shot 24 free throws in the second half. The math did not add up then, and it does not add up now. White called Thomas's contact egregious. She called it utterly disrespectful. She said Clark was on the receiving end of 2 cheap shots that night, neither of which was called in real time. And then she said the line that cut to the heart of something the league has been dodging all year. She said her team spent the entire offseason focusing on officiating, and the one thing they keep asking for is consistency. Clark, she said, is not officiated the same way as everybody else. Now, White is not a coach who makes those statements to stir drama. She is precise. She is measured. When Stephanie White walks to a microphone and says a player's conduct was egregious and dangerous, and that the officiating is inconsistent at the highest level, that is not venting. That is testimony. And the WNBA was now on the clock to respond. The next morning, it did. Sort of. The league announced that Alyssa Thomas had been retroactively assessed a flagrant foul 2 penalty and would serve a 1-game suspension for, quoting directly, recklessly making contact with her fist to the throat area of Caitlin Clark. The WNBA called it a non-basketball act. Thomas would serve the suspension on Saturday when Phoenix visited the Toronto Tempo. Here is the thing about that ruling that people keep glossing over. This was the first suspension of Alyssa Thomas's 13-year career. 13 years. And in those 13 years, there's a paper trail of moments that should have prompted earlier intervention. In 2024, Thomas threw Chicago Sky forward Angel Reese to the floor during a loose ball scramble. No suspension. In 2025, she elbowed Washington Mystics forward Kiki Iriafen in the throat in a strikingly similar sequence. No suspension. And in the 2025 WNBA playoffs semifinals against the Minnesota Lynx, she was involved in another reckless play that circulated widely. Each time, the league looked at the footage and moved on. So when the WNBA issued this 1-game ban and called it accountability, a significant portion of the basketball world responded with 2 words. 1 game? Robin Lundberg, the beat reporter who covers the Fever, had already gone on record calling Thomas a dirty player and arguing she should have been assessed at minimum a flagrant 2 during the game. He called for a multi-game suspension. Fans online called for far more. The league settled on 1 game, the length of a minor disciplinary action, for what its own statement described as a non-basketball act that targeted another player's throat. Whether 1 game fits the crime is a question the WNBA left completely open. It acknowledged the act happened. It acknowledged the officials missed it, and then it handed out the most modest consequence available. And if that was the only controversy of the week, it would have been more than enough. But on that exact same day, Wednesday, the same night Clark was on the floor, something else happened. Something the league probably assumed would slip past unnoticed. It did not. On June 24th, the WNBA released its official 30th anniversary commemorative poster. The league is celebrating 3 decades of women's basketball, and the poster was supposed to showcase the icons who defined it. Former greats, current stars, every franchise in league history represented in a single image. It costs $29.99 at the WNBA shop. Reasonable enough for a piece of memorabilia celebrating the greatest players in the league's history. Caitlin Clark is not on it. Let that sink in. The player who, in the span of 2 seasons, drove WNBA viewership to records not seen in the league's modern era. The player whose games on cable networks, not even national broadcast, routinely hit or surpass 1 million viewers. The player who, by nearly every business metric, has been the most commercially impactful figure in the WNBA's 30-year existence. Not on the poster. Sophie Cunningham, Clark's Fever teammate, who joined Indiana in 2025, is the Indiana representative instead. The backlash was immediate and it was loud. Former NFL quarterback Robert Griffin III posted a list of legends also missing from the poster. Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird, Tamika Catchings, Candace Parker, Elena Del Don, Cynthia Cooper, Sylvia Fowles, and said you simply cannot tell the 30-year history of the WNBA without those women. Sports broadcaster Keith Murphy pointed out that Clark had brought the league its highest ratings, increased revenues, expanded scheduling, new teams, record merchandise sales, and record attendance. And they gave her spot to someone else. Fans called it deliberate. Some called it incompetent. Some called it both. Here is where it gets genuinely interesting, though, because a sports business analyst named Darren Rovell offered an explanation that nobody expected. According to Rovell, the reason Clark is not on that poster may have nothing to do with the league at all. The claim, Clark's Nike deal, an 8-year, $28 million contract she signed in 2024, includes terms that restrict how her likeness can be used for merchandise. Outside of Nike itself, licensees like Windcraft, the company that produced the poster, can only use her name and number, not her image. If that explanation holds up, the poster snub may not be a snub at all. It may be a licensing wall neither the league nor Clark's camp has publicly addressed. Neither Clark nor the WNBA responded to that explanation. But it changes the entire framing. If Clark's own deal is what kept her off the poster, that is a business story, not a conspiracy. The problem is that nobody said that. The league released the poster with no explanation. And when you release something that looks like a deliberate erasure of your most popular player, especially on the same week, she ends up on the floor with a fist in her throat. Silence looks like guilt, even when the truth might be mundane. Step back and look at everything that happened inside 1 week. Monday, Clark gets a technical foul for clapping. Wednesday, a veteran drives a fist in her throat and nobody calls it. Wednesday, same night, officials review a reckless closeout on video and still do not upgrade it. Clark leaves with a back injury. The Fever lose by 2. Thursday, the league issues a 1-game suspension. And somewhere in the middle of all that, the 30th anniversary poster drops with Clark missing from it entirely. This is the WNBA's version of a perfect storm. And the uncomfortable truth at the center of it is that Caitlin Clark, the athlete who more than any other in the league's modern history drove casual viewers to tune in, is also the athlete who consistently ends up in the middle of these moments. She's been hit, shoved, clotheslined, elbowed, and now punched in the throat. She has received technical fouls for emotional reactions to those plays. And in almost every case, the most severe consequences landed on Clark's ledger long before they landed on the people initiating contact with her. Now, to be fair about the injury, Clark has been dealing with a back issue all season. She missed a game against Portland Fire on May 20th. The Fever were issued a warning by the league at the time, and Clark has been listed as probable in the game since. It is genuinely hard to pin the entire back injury on one play against Phoenix. The back was already fragile, but here is the point White made, and it is worth repeating. The contact was dangerous whether it caused the injury or not. A fist to a player's throat is not a basketball play. It does not matter if she walked out fine or walked out hurting. The act itself is the issue. Clark is now averaging a career-best 21.2 points per game in year 3. She's also putting up 8.2 assists and 4.0 rebounds per game. She has appeared in 17 of Indiana's 18 games after an injury-plagued second season. The Fever sit at 10-8, third in the Eastern Conference, 7th in the league overall, and firmly in the playoff hunt. They cannot afford to lose her. Not for a week, not for a game. There is one more piece of this that has not gotten nearly enough attention, and it involves what happened after the final buzzer on Wednesday night. After Phoenix's 111-109 win, the official Mercury social media account posted a stick figure graphic with the caption, "Do you want a piece of this?" The graphic appeared to depict a player in a position mirroring Clark's position on the floor during the Thomas incident. A multi-million-dollar professional franchise publicly posting what looked like a mockery of a player who had just been punched in the throat on their court. Fans are not amused. Several pointed out that the post appeared to celebrate or joke about what most of the basketball world had already labeled dangerous contact. The Mercury deleted or distanced themselves from the post as the criticism mounted. But once something is on the internet, it does not disappear. This detail matters beyond the obvious poor taste, because it speaks to the culture that enabled Wednesday night in the first place. When a coaching staff says publicly that they will remember it and they are not afraid of the smoke, and the result is a player getting punched in the throat, and then the organization appears to mock it on social media afterward, the word people start using is not competitive. It is not physical. The word they start using is something heavier. And the league's one-game response does not put that word away. So where does this land? The Fever have a home game against the Los Angeles Sparks on Saturday, June 27th. Clark will have time to recover, or at least time to try. The next and final regular season matchup between Indiana and Phoenix is scheduled for July 9th in Phoenix. Mark that day, because Sophie Cunningham, Lexi Hull, Maisha Hines-Allen, and every Fever player who watched what happened on Wednesday night will walk into that building carrying something that does not go away in 2 weeks. And the league will be watching too, or at least it should be, because the conversation happening right now is not just about one play or one suspension or one missing poster. It is about whether the WNBA, in its 30th year, has figured out how to protect the player who made more people pay attention to this league than anyone in a generation. A player who shows up to every game knowing she's going to take shots that would draw flags if they happen to someone else. A player who receives a technical foul for clapping while watching a fist hit another player's neck go uncalled in the same week. The suspension happened. One game. The league made its statement. But one game is also a statement. It tells you exactly how much the governing body of this league thinks a closed fist to the throat of its most marketable star is worth. And a lot of people think that number should have been higher. If this video laid out what you suspected was true all along, that there is something broken in how this league handles Caitlin Clark, do this one thing. Hit the like button, drop your take in the comments, and subscribe so you're the first to know when Indiana and Phoenix collide again on July 9th. Because whatever happened in those 2 games this week, that rivalry is just getting started. And if history is any guide, what comes next is going to be impossible to look away from.